Hi, this is Mike from This Old Relic, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to collect payment from snow removal. So, I got a lot of questions, and obviously, the almighty dollar is the biggest question that people have in the whole process of the business. Now, you could figure out the logistics and everything else, and if you can't figure it out ahead of time, you'll figure it out very, very quickly once you actually get started doing it. But how do you collect payments? How do you charge customers? How do you do this? How do you do that? These are big questions that I have, or that a lot of people have about how to handle the snow business. And this is one of the big questions that I had that it took me a while to figure out myself. When I first started doing snow removal, I wasn't looking to do it long term. It was at a place where I was working over the summers and I just had winters open at the time, and I was not necessarily looking to make a big business out of it. I was looking to get some extra cash over the winter when I wasn't working. So that was my main key thing, is that I didn't think too much about payments or anything like that. So I would just wait for customers to call me. When they called me for a snowstorm, I'd go out there, take care of their driveways, their sidewalks, collect payment when I got done. I was always working during the day because I was running a snowblower. You don't want to run one of those at like 2 a.m. and wake up the entire neighborhood. So there was, and then customers would only call you when they were awake. So you wouldn't get calls until like at least 6 a.m. Every once in a while, you'd get it the night before, and I'd be able to start at like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. I got lots of, I don't have a lot of war stories when it comes to snow removal. One of the big ones that I got though was a 4:30 a.m. Starting my day off, and that customer, it's the only customer that's ever stiffed me in my entire career. That's a story for another time. But before I get started, there's one thing I want to tell you. I am not a tax professional, but I'm going to talk about taxes, but I am not a tax professional. You are going to want to consult a tax professional about your taxes. I'm only going off of my own experiences dealing with my state. We have an income tax in my state, so I have to claim that out, claim all that stuff on my income taxes. Uh, your state may not have an income tax. I mean, well, obviously, you're probably not doing snow if you're in Florida, but I don't know. I'm not privy to all the laws in every single state. Now, a lot of the federal stuff is going to be the same. However, I'm still not a tax professional, so you might still want to consult a tax professional before you go on these things. And depending on when you're seeing this video, some of that stuff may have changed. So they change the tax code like at least once a year. So that's the first thing I want to put out there. I am not a tax professional. You are going to want to check with a tax professional about this. In order for this to work too, you're going to have to be a legit business. And when I say legit business, I mean you have to pay taxes. I'm not saying you have to have an LLC or anything like that. You can actually claim yourself as a business. So you have your social security number or some form of tax ID number, and that would be what you would use as a business. So you would claim yourself as the business. And again, in order for that, you have to be legit and paying taxes. I tell people, to be honest with you, with how much you pay in taxes and everything that the IRS forces me to do to be able to pay those taxes is worth it in itself. I mean, is worth paying those taxes for. Because the IRS, in order to pay those taxes, or at least to get the best rate possible on those taxes, I am not only having to chart all of my income, but I'm also charting all my expenditures for write-offs. And I can actually, at the end of the year, I can tell after doing my taxes, was my company profitable or was it not profitable? If I'm paying Uncle Sam, guess what? I was profitable. If I'm not paying Uncle Sam, I wasn't profitable. I might even be running in the red. But my taxes will tell me that. And it's something that you're forced to do. So, and it's one thing that you have to do in order to be a business, is to actually understand all those numbers. So I don't really ever recommend to anybody that they try to skirt underneath the table or anything like that. Pay your taxes, collect the money. If you don't make $600, well, then according to the IRS, I believe as of right now, at least, you don't have to pay taxes. But if you do make over $600 doing this, guess what? You're supposed to pay taxes on it. So that's the first thing I want to get through, is just be legit. pay your taxes in that term. Pay your taxes. You'll get customers that go, well, how much will you charge me if I pay you in cash, thinking that then you don't have to claim it on your taxes. I tell customers it's the same price no matter what because I pay taxes on it no matter what. I still claim it if they give it to me in cash. It's just the right thing to do, and it's how I keep track of my numbers. Otherwise, I'm sitting there. You have to remember. So there's a movie called The Untouchables, and ultimately it's about going after Al Capone and one of his ledgers. Al Capone knew as a businessman, even though he had all this stuff, all this illegal activity he couldn't claim on taxes, he still had a ledger and he still wanted to make sure he was making money doing it. So, and that's actually ultimately how they nailed Al Capone, was on tax fraud. So, be legit with it. Don't be like Al Capone. You don't want to end up in prison. So that is one of my big key factors on this is be legit, record how much you're making, record your expenditures so that you can write those off. And and just be legit about everything. In order to do this, you're going to have to be legit because you're going to have to accept credit cards. And those electronic payments are charted. If you accept checks, there's a document trail there for it. So go ahead and set up yourself right now to be legit and to understand that, I'm going to have to pay taxes. I'm going to have to record this money. Now, how do you record this money? Does this mean you open up your Excel spreadsheet? You can. That's one way of doing it. But there's a lot of different CRMs out there, which is a customer, what is it? Something management. Customer Relations Management is what it stands for, CRM. And there's a lot of different companies out there. You could use Jobber. You could use, what else is there? I got L&M is out there. I don't know if L&M does snow removal or not. I know they do lawn care. I think they do snow removal now. But L&M is one of them. Jobber is another. Service Autopilot's another one. I can get into what I love and don't love about each one of these. But the one that I use is absolutely free to start with, and I've never moved out of the free service on this one, is Square. And you can set up a Square account. You are going to have to give them your social security number because they need it for tax reasons. And you can accept credit cards through Square. One of the things I noticed about Square is that their rate is pretty much the same or less than everybody of all the other CRMs. And you could get started with them for free. So you're not having to worry about, so you put together your CRM, put together your customer lists, and you can do invoicing, you could do scheduling, you can do POS systems. Now, one of the issues that comes in with Square is it's not service-based. It is retail-based. However, I've been able to work and finick around it to make it service-based. So instead of having items and quantities, I have, instead of, listed, I have, lawn mowing, I have snow removal, I have salting, I have, leaf pickups, I have as all of my items in my store. Now, I don't have any kind of inventory to deal with any of this, so I don't deal with the inventory section of it. But that's what I can do. I can go ahead and list those. If you want, you can add a price to it, but I usually leave the price variable on all of them because they're going to be variable. So I can just punch in whatever it is at that time that I need to do that. They do have a calendar system in there too, and I did use that for quite some time. But I'm also going to talk to you about how I do this with my contract customers. And the calendar system is one way to actually be able to charge people that are not contract per se. But I'm going to go through how I do this system through Square. Now, so I have with Square set up, I have all my credit card processing happens through Square. I got one of those little readers and stuff like that if I need to take a credit card on site because I get a better rate if I use that reader than if I don't. Most of the time I end up manually punching in because the reader does not want to connect to my phone. I haven't figured out how to connect it to this new phone yet. I've only had one customer where I've had to deal with a credit card on site since I got this phone. most of the customers pay their invoices online through the invoice system. So that is what I use. I use Square. You don't like Jack Dorsey, whatever, I get it. He's the guy that owns Square. That's one of the kind of cool things about Square is that it's free, and he tries to keep it a lot of that stuff free until you get into the place where you're actually developing your business. Jack Dorsey, a lot of people, if you don't understand a lot of some of the personal things of this, Jack Dorsey likes to consider himself a humanitarian. Believe it or not, it's kind of like Jack Dorsey, who he used to own Twitter. He used to be the CEO of Twitter and owned it until Elon Musk bought it. What I understand is that he's actually working for Elon Musk in Twitter, dealing with a financial section, because the two have very similar ideas and goals and a lot of background in finances. Elon had PayPal, which he sold off. Jack Dorsey, who still has Square, is the company he uses. And the whole premise behind that is that Jack Dorsey loves the idea of people being impoverished, being able to pick themselves up by the bootstraps and move forward. And that's one of the reasons why he developed Square and why it's free to start off with, because he wants people to be able to start their own business and to dig themselves out of whatever situation they are. That's why when you start developing and going further in Square, he starts charging you for things, because at that point in time, now you've picked yourself up. Now he's going to make a little money on you, and it's fair, I think. But that's one of the reasons why he keeps that stuff free and cheap when you're first starting off. When you're dealing with no employees, you don't have to pay anything extra for Square. So that, and that also depends on how you're going to use the CRM as well. But it's something you can get started with for free. You can get credit card processing. You don't get monthly charges or anything like that. You pay per processing fee. Is it kind of steep? Kind of. I actually looked at monthly fees for credit card processing and what they charge you and everything. Believe it or not, it's really not that bad when you start looking at all of the numbers and everything. And when you start looking at CRMs, they all have them situated the exact same way, those credit card processing. So, and I after looking at all the prices and everything, Square's one of the least expensive. If they're not the least expensive, they're the same as the rest of the least expensives. So they're actually not a bad to use for credit card processing at all. So now getting into this, so you have all your customers into the CRM, you have your contract signed. Now, this is how I deal with my contract customers in the beginning of the season. I started this last year. I got no bites for seasonal contracts. This year I got a couple. But I set up a contract customer, and they get a choice. They can get a seasonal rate, or they can get a per push rate. Now, I give them, if they want them, I'll give them both rates, and they can decide from there. But ultimately, with the seasonal rate is I take 5 months out of the year, November through March, and I figure out 4 services each month. And that's what I charge them each month. Now, if I add that each month up, or take 1 month, multiply it by 5, that'll give me the seasonal rate. So it's basically, so you start off with November, and you're charging the customer for 4 services in November. In December, you might get 1 or 2 in my area. Come January, you can get 6, 7, 8. February, you can get 6, 7, 8. March, you might get 1 or 2. Maybe. The idea behind that, though, is that when you're not doing the service in November, they're actually paying for January and February already. So that's how that kind of works. And you could be doing services in November, even in my area. It's not very common, but typically we don't get much snow before Thanksgiving. If we do, we might get one service before Thanksgiving. So my customers then will get charged a monthly fee, which equals the seasonal rate. So if a customer goes to you and says, I want to pay the entire season, because this has actually happened to me, and I was just dealing with this customer now, I just invoiced them today for it. They went to me and said, I want to pay for the entire season up front. Gave them the price for the season, and they said they wanted to pay the season up front. So I invoiced them for the entire season today, and I gave them like a week to pay for it. But yeah, that's so you can do that. That's why it's good to know that seasonal rate. And the other thing too is when you write the contracts, you want to put in they're paying this much every month, and this is the seasonal rate. This is how much they're paying for the entire season. So if they do come at you and go, oh, well, I want to pay for the whole season, how much is that going to be? It's right there in their contract. You don't have to send them out a new contract or anything like that. They're just not going to pay that same way. So, that's basically how I handled that particular aspect with dealing with for a seasonal rate. Now, most customers, and still a lot of customers, for whatever reason, especially dealing with residential, they don't like to pay a seasonal rate. Even though, I'd be honest with you, all the early predictions of this winter says is that the seasonal rate's going to be the way to go, because also with the seasonal rate, you don't get an upcharge for snow over 6 inches. It's actually a upcharge for the season. So if the season's something like over, I forgot what I put, I think it's 39 inches, which is like the 10-year average or 30-year average for my area. I think it's like 39 inches. And I do it at the cutoff at the end of February, so it's not even a full season that I'm cutting it off at. Because we usually get a couple of snows in March that will tally into that. So that's when I will sit there and say it's like $5 an inch over that amount for the season. So there is an upcharge for that, but it has to happen throughout the entire season, not just per push. So when I tell you per push, I always say charge extra for snow at least over 6 inches. Now, you might get 5 3/4 inches. That stinks because you're basically almost there, but you're not quite. But you want to have an upcharge for snow over 6 inches, and the reason why is because if that snow gets over 6 inches, you're not at a loss for customers. By any means will you ever be at a loss for customers if the snow is over 6 inches. So that's why I tell people do an upcharge for snow over 6 inches. Depending on where you are located, it might be less, it might be more. It just all depends on where you're located. Because obviously in Minnesota they're going to get a lot more snow than we do in Chicago. But if you're in Tennessee doing this, you get some snow. But obviously you're not going to get 6 inches typically. So that's where my threshold cutoff is 6 inches. So when you start putting in the per push rate and you start adding in those extra 6 inches, it gets kind of pricey if you're doing it quite frequently. Customers this year who didn't take advantage of that seasonal rate is going to get nailed with that extra per push for over 6 inches. The ones that did, now what is the benefit of this? I have a steady income from November then through March through snow because of those customers. They're going to pay that much no matter what. The per push, unless it snows, I don't get paid. Now, let me tell you how I deal with the costs for the per push, even though they're contract customers. So they sign a contract in the beginning of the year. Now, one of the big things is when you are doing snow removal, time is of the essence. So if there's any way that you can make up time, you want to do that. It might mean getting paid a little bit later than when it snows. So if I have a contract customer, like the snow hits 2 inches, they expect me out there plowing their driveway, and that's the agreement we have, they are still set up on a monthly invoice. What I would do in that case is when I go out there and plow their driveway, I open up an invoice for them for the month, put in their information, and then mark down that service. I put down snow removal this much for whatever. If they get the over 6 inches, it's a little more, that kind of thing for that snow removal service. I come back later in that month, maybe a couple days later, I open up that same invoice, I put in there snow removal and then the cost for that snow removal. At the end of the month, that invoice has already been made for me. All I have to do is make sure all of their, that it's, because by default it sets it to pay immediately, and you could do it that way if you want. I usually give them some time to pay that invoice. I think I give them 2 weeks to actually pay the invoice after I send it. But I send out the invoice, Everything's already done. I just got to make sure all of those numbers, everything line up. Click a button, it sends and emails it to the customer, and the customer is able to pay for it online. They're able to click on that invoice and they pay for it online. With the monthly invoices, again, for the per season, is the same way. The first of the month, actually, those are great because I have them scheduled. I don't have to do anything because it's a flat rate. I just set it up and say, I want an invoice this month, this month, this month, and I want it to go out this day on this month. And it just sends it out automatically on the first of the month. Bam. It's completely automated. I don't have to do anything for those customers. Love those customers for that, and because that in my opinion, they're getting a better deal. But the per push, that's actually how I situate the per push. So they will still pay monthly for a per push if they are contract and we have an agreement. Now, one of the big things is you have to kind of cater to your customers a little bit. So one of the key things of a professional based business and somebody who is unprofessional is payments. And how do you pay? So I will go on, and there's a particular YouTuber out there. I will name his name. It's Mike Andes. So he goes out there and he says that you want to make sure that all of your customers, you want to have cards on file. And if you can get a card on file with residential customers, by all means, do it. My customers, whenever I request a card on file, I get really with customers. They just don't want to put their card on file. I think I have had one customer, and I do give them an option to put their card on file. Even it pops up on their invoice. I've had one customer put their card on file, and it's great because he was a seasonal rate for mowing, and that invoice would go through, and then a couple minutes later, boom, his money was in my checking account. So that's also another benefit of Square is that you can actually set up a checking account and savings account through Square. And if you do that, you don't have a waiting period before you get the money, and you don't have to pay to get the money right away if you're using those accounts. Now, so you actually already have, and they don't charge you any additional for those accounts, which is kind of nice too. So, that's another reason why I like Square. But dealing with those per push, so every monthly, and then I don't have to get out of my truck or have to walk up to the door, ring the doorbell, and wait for them to come to the door and be like, hey, it's going to be this much for the service. And then they go, oh, okay. And then let me go get my wallet or my checkbook. And then they're searching around, rummaging, and you just killed like a good 15, 20 minutes waiting for those people to pay. So I know it seems like you might be a little apprehensive about that. But I've never been stiffed doing this system, and these people have signed contracts that they're going to pay this, and the customers like it a lot more too, because they don't have to worry about making sure that I get paid every single time, or that they got cash every time it snows, or they got to know where their checkbook is every time it snows. They can, everybody knows where their debit card is or their credit card is. Nobody uses checks anymore. So I mail them an invoice at the end of the month for whatever services that they've had. They go online, click some boxes, and usually they have to set up an account first time around. After that, it's really smooth and easy for them. Click, click, click. I'm paid. I'm happy. They're done with me. Stress relieved. They can do it whenever time they want. They want to do it at midnight, they can. They want to do it at 2 a.m., they can. They want to do it at 6 a.m., 8 a.m., noon, whatever. They're not having to sit there and wait for me to show up to plow their driveway or anything like that. If they got to do stuff and they can actually get out before I get there, I mean, it makes life so much easier for everybody. And it is a mark of professionalism. It really is a mark of professionalism. Now, that being said, you do have to kind of cater to your customers and work with them how they want to. My customers really like that system, and I cannot tell you how many times, because I have had customers that I still have, I used to knock on the door and be like, hey, can you give me, and having this monthly payment thing though, they're just like, bam, this is beautiful, because I just go and I pay. A lot of them pay it right away because they're just so excited about the way that they're able to pay it. And I have customers I've never even met. To be honest with you, I've never physically seen these customers in person. I've talked with them on the phone. I mean, yeah, they exist. I talk with them on the phone. I email back and forth, text with them, that kind of thing. They know I exist. But I've never physically actually seen them in the flesh. Yeah, all because of the system. And this is kind of like how life works, I guess you could say. And they absolutely love this system because they don't even have to see me, So this is a wonderful, wonderful situation. Now, that being said, you're going to run into customers that do want to pay per push and pay you on site. I have an 87-year-old woman. She might be 88 now. We've nicknamed her Grandma. She reminds me of both my grandmothers. She had a lot of the interest of my dad's mom, and she has a lot of the personality of my mom's mom. And this woman, she has me wrapped around her finger, so I'll pretty much do anything for her. Don't tell her I said that. Shh. Next thing you know, I'll be like remodeling her basement for free. But it's basically because she reminds me so much of my own grandmothers, and my grandmothers have passed. So, but she pays by, as a matter of fact, one of my grandmothers would have been about the same age as she is now if she was still alive. But she pays me cash every time I plow. If I'm going to be there in the middle of the night, she leaves an envelope on the door for me, and I got to go pick it up. That's how she prefers to pay. I've tried to work with her to see if she wants to be in. Nope, that's how she wants to do it. She wants to leave me an envelope of cash every single time I do a service. What she does, I also mow for her. She does it the same way. That's just what she's familiar with. That's what she wants to do. She's 88 years old. She doesn't want to change anything. She's not hugely tech savvy. I'm surprised that she does have email and she does know how to text. But yeah, that's how she wants to do it. So that's how I do it. So you do want to cater to those customers, and is it the most professional? I'll be honest with you, not really. But in her mind, it is. That's because that's the way she wants it done. And having one or two customers like that is not that big of a deal. And like I said, she usually always has the money ready for me hanging on the door. When I show up, I just got to pull it off the door, so I'm not wasting a lot of time. Now, non-contract customers, this is where things get really kind of difficult. So what's great about contract customers is I can go at any time of day and take care of it's basically snow hits 2 inches, bam, I'm ready to go. I'm just waiting for the snow to stop so that I'm not doing their driveway 50 times over. That's it. And if the snow stops at 11 p.m. and I get out, I can go plow all those driveways and shovel all those sidewalks in the middle of the night, get done. It's 5, 6 a.m., go back home, maybe get a couple of hours of sleep, and my phone starts ringing off the hook. If it's a big storm, my phone will start ringing off the hook because of all these people who don't have contracts with services, because they're going to do it themselves. And then the snow gets so big, and it's like, I don't want to do it myself. And then they're searching and hunting around for somebody to do it for them. This is part of where the money comes in. Because first off, those non-contract customers, you can charge them a little more. They're a little bit more in distress. They didn't plan ahead. There's no loyalty to you. And those contract customers get certain benefits because of their loyalty to you. But when you have these customers, first off, they're going to call, again, when they're awake. They're going to be home when you show up. You take care of the service. You knock on the door. You ring the bell, whatever. It doesn't matter how many times you sit there and say, if you can please have payment ready because we're going to collect it when we're done. If you can please have payment ready, it's going to be this much money. It doesn't matter how many times, how much you try to prep them or anything like that. Whenever you ring the bell or knock on the door, it's going to be like, oh yeah, I got to go run and find the checkbook, or I got to go and see if I can find cash, and you're getting paid in quarters, and and that takes up, a lot of time. You're sitting there for 10, 15, 20 minutes for them to pay. That's, if you think about that, if each customer takes 10 minutes, it takes you a half hour to do a property. After 3 customers, you could have gotten in a 4th. So that's why I do my contract customers the way that I do it, that I don't have to collect payment at that moment, because that saves me so much time. I can get in more customers that way and get in more business that way. So if I don't have to sit there and wait for them to collect and pay. And not only does it make you look more professional, not only that, but they have a method of payment, because whether you like it or not, we don't use cash like we used to. I'm very worried personally about the idea of a cashless society, but let's face it, we don't use it very frequently. And I mean, even if people have some cash, I mean, I think I got a $20 bill in my pocket right now. I don't carry a lot of cash on me. Everything's because it's so easy to go swipe a card. And that's how everybody does it nowadays. So what's nice about that too is those customers that you're over there, and if you get the Square reader or whatever, some kind of credit card reader for your cell phone, or you can manually punch in the numbers too, you can take a credit card on site. They don't have to have a cash or check for you, but you can take a credit card right there on site, and that'll help make things move quicker. Make sure that you get paid, because at that point in time they have no excuse that they don't have cash or they can't find their checkbook, or, well, where's your debit card? I know you know where that is. I know you just took it out to Target, just yesterday, to go stock up on bread and milk because we got a storm coming. Yeah, I know you know exactly where that's at. So by accepting credit cards even on site. Now, that's one of the things too, is you may want to look at investing in one of the readers. I had a few of the plugins with this new phone. I don't have the headphone jack anymore to plug in the reader, and that was what I would use. I do have the Bluetooth one, but that one is a real pain in the butt, especially when you are trying to disconnect and reconnect it, because you're trying to conserve battery power and stuff like that, and all kinds of things like that. But I mean, that's you usually get a better rate with the reader than you do manually punching it in. So that's another option for payment at the door, is if you have those credit cards, and that makes you look more professional if you're able to accept credit cards. So that is my first key thing, is be legit. Don't go around and look at this as a cash only business. But I mean, you can do cash accounting. I do cash accounting. That's very common. But that's a whole different thing than actually having a cash under the table kind of a business. Be legit. Pay taxes. If you do that, and you're charting all of your income and you're charting all your expenditures, you have like 80% of the stuff that you need to be able to run a business and actually understand a business, your business, right then and there, if you're just doing the tax stuff. That is the big takeaway. I'm not a tax professional. You want to run a legit business. You want to have a CRM set up with your contract customers. You want to send them a contract. I give them a choice. You don't have to, but I personally give them a choice. So they can pay per season, which I send them a monthly invoice first of the month for the whatever dividends of that month for 5 months, or per push, in which case I catalog as I do it and then send it to them at the end of the month. They may only have 1 push in for the month. They may have 5 pushes in for the month. They may have 10 pushes in for the month. It's going to vary month to month for those customers, but you're not sitting at the door collecting money. And then for those non-contract customers, I just collect the money after I get done with the service. And I give them options: cash, check, credit card. Most pay with check or cash. But yeah, if you have the ability to set up through your CRM a credit card to take at the door, you can do that. And it's a mark of professionalism, and it's going to help move you quicker, because you have to wait for people to look for their checkbook, or some people will actually just hand you a credit card by habit. So if you don't accept credit cards, you need to make sure that you state that right out of the gate. Tell them that you do not accept credit cards, so that they know they need a cash or check. And you want to accept checks because people don't carry cash with them anymore. So at least they have some way of paying you. That is basically everything in a nutshell. That's the basics of, how to collect payment, how to get the payments from your customers, and keep it quick and efficient. All right. Well, if you've gotten this far, you probably like this. And if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and click on all the notifications. Like the video. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments. If you don't have any questions, or if you just have a comment, go ahead. You can put those in the comments. Whatever you want to do, I'm open for it. But please, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, go ahead and subscribe. And I will see you next time.